here with Stan Kleja, and we are talking about goal setting and the importance of goal setting with properly setting the goals too, not just coming up with a number and saying, hey, this is, or not necessarily a number, but a goal and just, hey, this is what I want to do with no rationale behind it.
Yeah, aligning that goal with your actual procedures on a daily basis to make sure it makes sense. A lot of people set wild goals, which are great, but what they're doing clearly won't achieve those goals.
Right. And to put it into context, my 5-year goal, which we've talked about before on the show, was basically my 5-year time frame to not fail. And I genuinely, if I was going to fail within 5 years, I was willing to commit 5 years to do everything that I possibly could, morally and ethically correct, to build a business and to hustle. But if I reached that 5-year goal and I wasn't able to live off of what I was doing, it was time to go back and to get a job. And that goal just was something that it was a personal whatever for me, for whether it was, hey, I'm 20, I don't know what I was, 28, 29 at the time. And realizing that by that time I would be mid-30s, early to mid-30s. So I realized, okay, I still had enough time to get my life in order. I could still have a family. I could still, have kids, all that stuff, and then start building my life a little bit differently. So that was the reason I chose that as a time frame from a 5-year standpoint. But oftentimes, I think a lot of people make the biggest mistake of, hey, it's going to happen now, which again, we've touched upon that. But give yourself a true time frame that you can actually accomplish things. We know how fast time goes. I mean, it's already almost the middle of February now, and you blink and the year's Q1's almost gone already. It's just insane.
Yeah, things happen fast. So setting those goals based on what actually can happen, and it's hard to determine that. I think that's really why people make outlandish goals that maybe won't happen, is because in their brain, it's like, well, why wouldn't it happen? So working backwards from your goal to today, tomorrow, 1 year from now. I know, you had like a 1-year goal as well when you set those 5-year goals. What was that when you first started?
Yeah, so I had a 5-year, which was my main one. I didn't have specific goals for years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. My unofficial 1-year goal was show progress. And that's kind of how I really figured stuff out. So for the first year was, are people even reaching out to buy? Are people actually happy with the product? Are people reaching out to buy again off of me for the product? So that was there was no, hey, I need to hit X, Y, Z by the end of year 1. It was purely, do I see progress and do I see growth? Additionally, sales numbers were a big thing for us. My first year in business, 2016, I'm pretty sure, because it was about 11 months in business. I think I did $175,000 in sales. I'm pretty sure that number sticks with me for some reason. I think year 2, I did $440,000 in sales, and then it was incremental for a couple years after. I think 5, then 680, then 720, then 810, or whatever it was, for the first 5 years. But so, one year goal was, are we seeing growth? Are we seeing progress? Are we getting better suppliers? I was learning everything. I had no idea about suits. I had no idea about fashion. I should share a picture. I sent it to the team the other day, and it was 2014, and it was before we had the custom suits, and I was in New Jersey at a conference for an NFL player, Cody Lattimore. He played wide receiver, I think, for the Broncos. And it was just like a little camp that he was having, and there were some other vendors there. And I looked at the picture the other day, and I'm holding a box for Proper Notch trying to sell those. And I had a Macy's suit on, and it was super baggy. And again, built by doing, you're just figuring shit out along the way. But why I bring all that stuff is, progress can be defined differently, and there's nothing truly that has to be truly tangible. It could be the intangible goals that you have. But again, my goals were, do I have progress along the way? And take out all the other stuff. Take out, hey, are people complimenting the suits? Take out, hey, this was the best suit, or I want to buy again. The sales numbers alone were growing. So I knew that if I just tweaked my life and figured out how to get out of the hole that I was in, I would be okay. That was a very big catalyst in the beginning stages. Then you throw on top of that, man, I got a suit off you. It was the best suit I've ever had, or it was such a cool process. That also added fuel to the fire of, hey, year 2, here we come. Year 3, here we come, and so on. So it was an interesting thought process early on.
Yeah. So those are kind of like almost feeling goals. Like, does it feel good to grow things?
That's where Stan would have
Yeah. So I'm over here. Those don't sound like measurable goals. We need stats. We need numbers. How many good reviews did you want? How many people coming back to buy suits did you want? And it is, when you're first starting off, I don't know that, from a time management standpoint, it makes sense to sit down and try and set those goals and measure those. But certain larger ones, like you could have had it, we want revenue to grow 20% year over year or something in the beginning. So you have a more tangible goal. You want to make sure you can measure it.
my thought was just anything growing is good.
No.
I don't care if it was 1% better or 0.5% better. I don't care if it was the same amount of revenue growth, but other things grew. I was cool with that. That's really how I operated. Now, at the same time, when you think about this stuff too, this is where everybody, as an entrepreneur, we're all different. We're all going to do things differently. So have Stan 10 years ago start his own business. He has different ways that he calculates goals. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a calculated person from that standpoint. I have street smarts and I go off of my gut with a lot of things. And I used my gut for goals versus data for goals. And just totally different way to do it.
Yeah, and to be fair, when my mother and I started the accounting firm almost 10 years ago, it was a similar thing. Like, let's just see what happens. But as you get more experienced and you're trying to, I guess when you're trying to drive a specific result, the goal matters a lot more, because you can't just, some people say, I want to make more money next year. They don't set how much, they don't set how they're going to do it. Then that doesn't leave you a lot of
Clarity is also.
yeah, mile markers to know if you're on the right track or anything. That's just kind of like, 3 months into the year, are you going to hit your goal or not? Are you on track to hit your goal or not? So if you have a specific, we're going to grow 20%, then you need to hit a certain amount of money by 3 months in to know if you're on track for that goal or not. Because then it's like, ooh, we're a little behind that goal. We need to really push harder. Or we're way ahead of that goal. We're doing great. We can just keep doing what we're doing. That's where a measurable goal can come more into play during your day-to-day tasks.
Well, I think too, that's why you don't just have a 1-year goal. You don't have a 2-year goal. You don't have a 3-year goal. You have multiple goals with a longer term goal in perspective, because as in theory, as we grew revenue wise from year one on, we just constantly grew and we grew and we grew. Now, we could have been selling more at the time, but making less because our margins were shitty. We weren't doing things right. Like, that's where the numbers really play into complementing the outcome of these things.
Yeah, some people set goals that aren't really going to drive the result that they want to happen. Like, at the end of the day, you want to make more money, but you set a goal to sell more, but maybe you do a lot of discounts, you give a lot of stuff away, or whatever happens to make that goal happen, but then you didn't make any more money. So it's like, well, what was the point? So setting some guide rails along the goals you're setting, I think could be super helpful.
And we made a lot of mistakes early on. I mean, I was very philanthropic from the beginning of this venture, to the point of, like, I was giving money away to people when I didn't have money, which, looking back on it, it is what it is. You're just helping people in need. But I gave a lot, and we still do. We give a substantial amount of things away each year, and money and whatnot. And but I made a lot of mistakes early on by giving people money when I shouldn't have.
Or you just didn't have it to give, is all that was happening.
Right.
But that's where goals don't have to just be money either. They can be, we want to build a network. We want to have so many more sales or so many more clients in our book of clients, or employees, geographic locations. There's a lot of different types of goals, but they're all kind of interconnected. If you are setting a sales goal, but you think you're pretty saturated in the market you're in, well, then are you selling a different product to drive more sales to the same clients? Or are you going to a different market and selling the same products or even different products to a different market? So you expand your capacity.
Yeah, I guess looking back on things, the optimism that I had probably trumped a lot of things in capacity of, like, hey, maybe these goals weren't realistic, but I was just the optimism that you try to set things. So when you can put numbers behind it really takes away a lot of the guesswork. And that's where Stan and my relationship, that's where our relationships have gotten so good, is we have that. Hey, I'm the super risky one. I believe we could figure this out. Where you're like, hey, let's figure it out structurally, if it's even doable and if it's even a realistic time frame.
And that's where I'm a fan of using ranges instead of specific numbers. So if you want, say your version of we're going to do amazing is 50% growth, but then what's the minimum acceptable, we're still headed in the right direction? Put a bottom on that goal too. What's 50 to down to 20? Anything in there is good. And that's what we're trying to drive for versus a specific target, I think can help people. So then you're not totally failing. You're just not way up at the top end either.
And that's where we differentiate a lot of this time. And as you know, we go through our numbers every single month and review them. After I meet with Stan every single month, I'm upset.
Yeah, you're shooting for up here. And I'm like, well, we're above the bottom goal, which is still a good goal. You could go even lower than that and still be okay.
So moral of that story is I feel like we're failing every single month purely because Stan is so involved in focusing on the numbers, where I like to let a little optimism financially buzz me through things when I need them to. But again, that's how I'm wired. That's how I'm programmed. I'm a risk taker. I've always been that way. I just always believe I'll just make more money and I'll figure stuff out. So good or bad, that's just me. So there's no right or wrong. We talk about this on every single episode. Everybody does things differently, and that is purely okay. We're all allowed to do things differently. Just the way we walk through life. It's your life. Do what you want to do. It's not my place to say that or anything, but this is what worked for us.
Yeah, and that's super important. Everybody's specific situations are different. You might start a business with no goals at all, and you're just like, yeah, let's see what happens here. But what about when you work, some of the businesses were partners together. How do you set joint goals when everybody is kind of coming at it from a different mentality or perspective?
That's when you have to have the right partners. And I think when you trust one another, because you've seen the way they work, seen the way they present themselves, the work ethic first and foremost is the most important thing. We have such a good recipe now with everybody that, you know, even our team that we have, like, things get done. We don't have to really follow up on a lot. There's certain things we still have to keep an eye on, but the workflow that we have is people just get shit done. And I think that's such a powerful thing that, hey, did XYZ do this or did they do this or whatever? Like, no, it's getting done. Now we have checks and balances along the way. We're very meticulous with like softwares like Basecamp, Pipedrive for our CRM system. Derek is just a wizard with Zapier and putting these automations behind all these businesses. So we certainly put benchmarks. We have, I think he said 50,000 automations running a month.
Something ridiculous.
On through Zapier with all of the stuff that we have running from a business standpoint. So again, you know, throw Derek into the mix with this. His mind works way different than ours. I don't even know how to describe him. He's just very different than all of us. But it all works. But we all trust each other, and we've proven that. Again, going back to previous conversations, why you don't just give things up right out of the gate. It's okay with forming a partnership 5 years down the road, working together for 5 years or 7 years or 10 years before you officially become a partner with someone. But when you do make that decision to bring in a business partner in some capacity, when equity is on the table, they have to be the type of person that operates the way that you do to get things done, or everything's going to collapse.
And that's where I think goals can help you, because you can set, hey, we're working with a bunch of partners. Here's what even if it's not something specific, like measurable, like I would prefer, if it's just a general direction, here's where we're headed. That just means everyone's going in the same direction. Because if everyone's doing things and independently getting things done, but they're all headed all over the place in various different directions, maybe even opposite directions, it really hinders growth and kind of takes you in the wrong direction.
Oh, and even for us, as we're expanding, like we signed our location in Columbus back in December, early January, actually, this year. So we could stop there and have, you know, two in Pittsburgh, one in Columbus, 3 locations, all is great. But that's just never been and I think collectively we've all shared that sentiment of, like, we want to grow this thing pretty big. So we could step back and say, cool, let's focus as much as we can on Columbus getting better, on the North Hills location getting better, and really putting every single effort into these locations, which we're still doing, but simultaneously we're implementing the same things as we expand into different regions. So this comes down to the satisfaction of the partners, and collectively, are we on the same page or not from that standpoint as well? If we just decided to say, hey, let's just pump the brakes here for a couple of years, we would all be fine, and we would be no problems with that whatsoever. But I know in discussions that we have on a regular basis, like, no, let's keep going. Let's get, start the 3. Now we have 4 and 5 coming. We have 6 we want to get in Scottsdale. Okay, as we get through 4 and 5, 6 is more on the radar. Do we want 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on? And that's really our strategy is we're having fun. We're loving doing it. We have the money to do it at this point. We can reinvest it back in. We want to take control. We don't have to take outside equity to grow the business or the brand. At this point, I could do it on my own or I could do it with partners, and we're choosing to do it with the partner route because I want to take care of everybody along the way. And we have such a good working group that it's making this expansion easier than it could potentially be.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Goals aren't static. You don't set a goal and then just, oh, we're not going to hit it, so we're just losing our goal for 6 more months until the end of the year. You can change that goal and go, okay, well, now based on what we know, that revenue number is not realistic. Let's set a realistic revenue that's still pushing and still a good goal, but is something that's more achievable. Or vice versa, we're 6 months into the year, we already hit that goal. Let's make a new goal for the year that's something we can shoot for the next 6 months. So you don't have to keep things the way they are, but it's good to have that direction. It's good to let everybody on the team know, whether they're partners or employees, kind of where you're headed, what you're shooting for. And that can help them independently make smaller decisions based around getting to that goal.
Do you see a difference in a lot of the people that you work with from, obviously you have all kinds of walks of life from a business owner, but are some more focused on those things versus others? And then does that translate to success ultimately?
I don't know how much it translates or how much data I would have to support that. I would say some people I've asked them, so what are your goals this year? And they said, no one ever asked me that before. They've never thought about it. They're just kind of going, they're in the weeds or they're just doing what they're doing and they've never thought about setting a goal. Some people set a goal. I have a retail guy that he set a goal for this year that he hit already 2 months in a row of a monthly revenue target that he thought it would take him 12 months to get to. He's already 1 month in, he got to it. So it's like, okay, that was too low of a goal. But based on last year, it didn't seem, it seemed like kind of a reach. So sometimes things just happen and you crush it right away or vice versa.
I think one of my favorite things that we've done, I've always known setting goals is it's a priority, but you were the first person I ever worked with that we would set the goal and then we would revisit the goal.
Yeah, that's a key aspect of goal setting.
And that's one of my favorite things too, is like, being able to look back where we were and wanted to make X amount of money and have X amount of stores and have X amount of teammates and whatever that is. And to hit those and then going above those is pretty wild to look back. Cause then when I put myself in my 2017 shoes, 2018 shoes, when shit was really, really hard, I was pretty much as broken as could be as a human being. But to look back and finish those difficult years and saying, holy shit, we actually did these things. Or we were a little short on, there's typically 3 goals we would pick every year. And it was, hey, we were short on 1 goal, but we hit 2 of the 3. Okay, cool. And that's okay because the one we were short on was still a good goal. We just didn't hit it. Then the next year we hit it. So I think setting goals, checking in on those goals, reviewing those goals annually, then saving those for the future on an ongoing sheet that you can kind of measure really also adds another level of consistency, comfort, and progress. Because as an entrepreneur, when you do something on your own and it's really, really hard and you're broke and you don't have any money and you've been at the bottom, when you get to a different level of success, you don't bask in it and you don't think about it. You still operate the same way you did. So it's like, it's cool to say, oh, let me pause, look at this. And then, oh shit, we've done some really cool things. Because in my mind right now, I'm operating like negative $86.40 is in my bank account like it was in 2017.
Yeah, I'm so bad at that. I tell my wife all the time, I never celebrate the wins. They're just like, all right, we hit that goal. What's the next one? We're already going to hit that goal. Let's plan for the next one. Let's just keep it rolling.
Well, I think that's the case because when you're at the bottom and you're trying to start something, you know how hard it is to get there. But at the same time, like when things are really, really good, we know it's not going to be good forever. So there's always going to be that lull period that happens again where it slows down. I talked to my team the other day and January was just shitty for us. It was we had snow, the political climate of all the nonsense. Purchasing habits are different.
After Christmas, people are paying off credit cards.
Yeah.
Not spending money.
Correct. So like we've lived January before. We've had really good Januaries. This year just wasn't what we wanted to be. So now February needs to be a makeup for January again, which is fine. But when things are good, you got to keep padding it. You got to keep stacking it because at some point it's going to slow down. And then you start saying, "Oh shit, do we suck at sales all of a sudden? Does our brand stink? Does our clothing suck? Or why isn't this working?" And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, something happens, and then the momentum just shifts. And it's the same thing with gambling and playing blackjack. When the table's hot, you double down, you triple down, you try and
That's not statistically accurate.
maybe that's why I lose all the time with that. But the mentality of that is very similar. But nonetheless, you keep grounded. You just stay focused on what you're doing. And at the end of the day, when you realize that it could be taken any day, any one thing could happen, that it's all over. And I want to just keep the nose down and keep kind of pushing with this business because it's hard.
Yeah, that's one of the things people kind of mess up when they're setting those goals is they don't have synergy from big goals for the company down to small goals or targets for their employees or for individual day-to-day stuff. So if for clothing, what we do is we set a company-wide annual sales goal, and then we break that down. Well, there's this many salespeople. Here's what each salesperson would need to do to achieve that goal. Because I think even you before have said, like, we want to hit this number. And it's like, cool, that means everybody needs to sell way more than they're going to be able to sell. And it's like, well, that's not realistic. So that's one of the pitfalls. Make sure whether it's a money goal or a time goal or something else, that it is doable. Like, work backwards into how that would look. Do a hypothetical. If we're trying to achieve this, we would need this many employees selling this much stuff. We would need to get this much from the manufacturer. Some people's manufacturers or service providers can't handle that much volume. So is that working back there? Or we would need this much capital to buy this much stuff to be able to do that much thing. Make sure everything works together within your goals, because a lot of times you might have this one goal, so you need 3 or 4 supplemental goals that you need to do first to open up the pathway for that main goal to happen. So doing them in order as well is helpful.
Yeah, what we do for our business for the clothing is every stylist or sales rep has their own quota. I took a lot of the things that I learned in medical sales and tried to implement that into the clothing, which it took 5 or 6 years to really iron out a true commission structure for our business. And I don't think we really landed on something good until 2 years ago. So it's like we were just trial and error, figuring things out. And I think that's
3 years.
3 years ago is when we really implemented it, which is when things really started taking off for us. So it was super crucial. But, Krista's been with us the longest. Her commission structure needs to be higher. We've invested more time with her purely out of the duration of her being here. We have Fazio now. He just got bumped up to a different tier from a commission structure standpoint. He's crushing it. He's doing really well. And then we have new hires where it's not fair to start them at these worlds where somebody who's been here a year or 2 or 3 has been there. The fun part for us is now we're doing different things where if we hit certain goals, we're going to do a company trip at the end of the year, and we're having sales contests. This has kind of been a dream for me, was getting to a point in business where we could take some of the profits and reinvest them back into the team to make their lives better, because they're committing and working their asses off to be a part of building something super special. So it's like there's a lot of synergy really, really happening now based off of us putting in company goals. And we finally have processes, procedures in place in order to maximize and calculate these goals that we're focused on. And, I bother you every year. Hey, how can we do more? How can we do more? And it's like, hey, make some money first. So.
And that's the benefit of setting goals, is you have a framework to work within when you're building things out, like commission structures or bonuses for the team or company celebrations for things. Because if you don't hit that goal, you're not going to do that thing. You don't have that cost. You don't have that income either. And you can build a structure that sort of balances itself out, where the company as a whole will still be okay, whether you hit that goal or not, because of the structure you've built.
Yeah. And even for us, from keep reverting back to the commission structure, we've changed ours as the business has grown, as we've gotten to different stages, as we went from having some part-time people to full-time people. Now pretty much, everybody's full-time except Jesse's doing part-time still for us, but we had to change the commission structure around based off of the success of the business, not based off of the people here. And, as long as everybody's rowing the boat the same direction, we're going to get to where we want to go. But it's hard, especially you have somebody that's become successful in any business and they hit a certain number. Well, next year the number's got to be higher if we're going to grow. And that was always the hard part in the medical sales world, was all the reps would get frustrated because now the quota the next year is just outrageous. And, and that's what it is. Then you don't hit it that year and then it's down. But we've set something up that's pretty special that if you really consistently stay here, focus on what we teach you, focus on what we're showing you, you should consistently always grow based off of things that Derek has implemented from a lead generation standpoint, where we're always consistently filling the pipeline and filling the hopper with potential leads.
Yeah, and a lot of this depends on what stage in business you're in. I think you should always have at least some sort of goal, whether you're starting out or you're successful or you're selling your business. It's good to have some mile markers, especially when things get weird and you're not sure what's happening. You could look to those and be like, okay, things aren't that bad. We've still hit the goal, or we've come pretty close to the goal, or things are still okay.
Yeah, the perspective of that is huge because even times where you and I talk and it's like, hey, dude, like look where we are, like look what the numbers we're doing on a month.
We have one graph that's the monthly revenue for the life of the business, and it's just like, look where it started and how it's gone up and down, but the general trajectory is all positive.
Yeah, and there are times where we just have a shitty month, and that is what it is, and like that's okay. But there's no business that's able to avoid that. That's just consumer habits. It's up and down. Every industry is different. Every experience is different. But when it's you and you're involved in it, you feel like it's the end of the world because things are just changing. And then, whoa, shit, is our suits going to be dying? And we get questions all the time, like, are people actually buying suits? We sell thousands of suits a year. Thousands and thousands. And it's like, and we're growing and we continue to grow. So it's, as we expand some of especially for the goal setting side of things, as we enter different markets, we're learning the psychology of consumers in Columbus. Are they different than Pittsburgh? When we go to Tampa, when we go to Nashville, Nashville, people are still going out and about all the time. Pittsburgh, weekends and evenings, people don't really dress up here. Very rarely do you see that. Or if they do, it's a small subset of people that really do. Well, you go to a Nashville, you go to a Tampa, everywhere you go, if it's a Tuesday at 6 p.m. at dinner, you're seeing people dressed to the nines and looking well. So the fun part about our next goal setting is, what are we going to learn from each market that we advance into, and what's different than what we've had for the last 10 years versus now in these new markets where people don't know who we are. As much as we want to feel like we're this massive brand and we're doing great, but there's a lot of people out there that don't know about us, and there's a lot of opportunity out there that we've not uncovered yet. Now's the time to figure out how to do that and maximize, because at some point we want to go overseas and we want to, I guess I should tell you that, we want to go overseas and do some other things as well. So, there's just opportunity, and these goals can shift and will shift based off of success or failures, and not all failures that change your goals are bad failures. Sometimes they pivot you in a better direction to become more successful, which is also a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I would, in the vein of goal setting, if you're reading about other people or someone's telling you what their numbers are, even some of the numbers David just rattled off, I always say be careful. Everybody's vocabulary around certain metrics are different. Profit versus income versus sales versus gross profit versus net income, depending on industry. If you sell a house for $1 million, you have sales of $1 million, you don't necessarily get $1 million. So things are always wildly different. Don't be discouraged or feel like you have to set goals based on somebody else. Set goals that make sense for you, for your situation.
And every industry is very different from, you could do 100 million in sales, but your net's 0.05%, right? So it's like, that's some of the stuff too. Like when you're diving into a business and trying to start something, do yourself some due diligence and homework on what's standard in this industry that I'm entering, what type of profits are available. What can I, and there's enough information through ChatGPT, social media, seminars, whatever it is. People are pretty transparent. Now there's a lot of bullshit out there for sure, which we all see that on a day-to-day basis, but you can uncover as much as you possibly can, more than you probably realize, on what an industry standard should potentially be. So as you're building a, whatever business is, a bakery, a roofing company, or whatever it may be, find out from just doing your research so you can actually set proper expectations and align properly with the goals that you're going to have moving forward.
Yeah, the SBA publishes statistics about small businesses to give kind of like broad benchmarks, but they also have some industry specific and regional specific things too, depending on where you are. I'm a big lover of small businesses, and I think as humans, our ability to like comprehend numbers isn't great, especially over long periods of time. So if you had to guess without looking at the answer, how many small businesses do you think there are in the US?
Well, I'm just staring.
Oh, you
So
just looked at the answer.
I know from past discussions, I believe small businesses make up over 50% of the GDP. I'm pretty sure.
That is
Is it on there?
pretty close. Yeah, 45.
Oh, for private sector jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I know it's a vast number. And even as we've gotten into business, man, like we have what 10 people that were associate work with us now. Like
Yeah, that's what's cool about I think it's cool about being a small business owner is you have other people's jobs that you're giving them, other people's income that you're able to facilitate. Not just your employees, but vendors you work with, things like that. So it's
it's
pretty cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's the coolest thing is as we business owners tend to gravitate towards other business owners. So we have conversations with small business all the time and different people. And the coolest thing about a small business is the fact that you're able to control the culture. I think that's probably the most rewarding thing is, you work in an office somewhere and you go in and then there's Tammy and Molly in a cubicle next to you and John down the hall from you. And it's just like, I don't want to see this guy again, but hell, here we are again because we work together and they come over and say a stupid joke or they're just a jerk for no reason. It's like as a business owner, we get to control the environment here. So every time we come into work, it's with people we love and we want to be with.
Yeah. And
It's awesome.
you could set goals around that as well as cultural goals. You could do employee surveys about satisfaction, depending on the size of your industry or your business. So don't just focus on money goals either.
And that could be an episode in itself too, is like, how do you build the right team? And we should do that actually as we talk about this. Like
Yeah.
finding the right culture is so important when it comes to this, especially early stages in business, especially when goal setting is there. Because when you have bad apples in your organization, especially when there's 3 employees, 5 employees, 10 employees, one bad apple can really eat away at everything. And I always say building a business is similar to building a skyscraper. The higher you want to take this, the more floors you want to add into the skyscraper, the stronger and the deeper the foundation has to be in order for it to succeed and for it to grow and expand. One bad apple with 5 employees or 6 employees really throws a wrench in things. And we've had that experience in the past for years and years periodically. And we're finally at a point where everybody's rowing the same way. And we have such a cool group of people that work with us and we have such a cool team and thing going on that it's like the aha moment of, oh shit, we're doing this the right way with the right people. And then everybody wants to help each other even more, which is just such a blessing to have.
Yeah. It's hard to build a team while building a business. It's like almost a separate thing that's happening while you're trying to make money.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest challenge that you have in business is building the team. I think the other stuff, doing the work, sometimes if you're a worker, you're a worker. Doing the work, now if you're doing it the right way is a different story. If there's progress, that's a different story. So you have to have the awareness. But the people along the way is one of the hardest things to find. For a slew of reasons, especially as great of social media as social media is, it also makes things very difficult because everybody on social media is rich. Everybody on social media is 23 years old and makes $500,000 a year. And it's like, it's not the reality of the world, and you could poke holes into that stuff all day long. And those people look the same, they talk the same, they walk the same. So it's like you could see the BS that's behind them, but that stuff throws a wrench into things, especially when you're starting out, especially when things aren't going well, especially when it's not easy. You get inundated with all these people online. You're like, damn, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah, and I think that's we implemented this into our hiring process. Is one of the questions is around what the employees' goals are in the short term and in the long term and what they have to do with the company here. And I think if you're someone that's interviewing for jobs, that's a good question to ask your potential employers too, is what are their goals? Where are they taking the company? I love when a candidate asks me that because it's like, oh, you actually have some forethought. You care where this is going. You're not just looking for a job today. You're looking for a career or a future here tomorrow. So that's, again, where goal setting can help. If someone asks you today in an interview, what are your goals for this company? Do you have answers? It's like, yeah, here's my 1-year goal. Here's my various targets for this. Here's my 3-year goals. Here's my 5-year goals.
And if you're out there listening too, and you're, like that's a very, very good point too. So not only should you know what you want to ask, but you should know what you want to ask the people that You should know what you want to answer, but you should also know what to ask the other people that you're trying to do work with. Again, same thing from a manufacturing partner, same thing from a business partner who isn't a business partner within your business, but you do business with them. You want to know what their goals are too. And we'll go in particular on the closets because we're just starting up Closets by David Allen. And when we were going through our list of who we want to work with from a manufacturing partner, we had a couple thoughts in mind. Is we didn't want somebody too big because we want to be an A-list person for them from a business partner standpoint, and we don't want to be with anybody small. We want somebody that's going to accommodate our needs and our growth as we scale this thing, because we need them to provide the best product and experience that we would provide regardless. And I think that's something we're looking for. I need a 20-year down the road partner. I need a 30-year down the road partner. Who's going to be with me, not just for a year, not just for 2 years, not just for 5 years, but 10, 15, and 20. Because as well, if I want to sell this at some point, I want to make sure there's continued growth opportunity down the road beyond us selling, which is only going to add more value to that sale whenever the time comes.
Yeah, when we ask people what are their goals and they don't have an answer, it's a red flag for sure, because those are the types of businesses that don't necessarily have a direction and might not necessarily make it as long as we want them to make it, as long as we'll need them to function.
Yeah, because you don't want to. You should always have backup partners in some capacity. And when I say partners, this time I'm not talking equity. I'm talking about just people you do business with.
Stakeholders.
Yeah, you should always have multiple ideas of what you're going to do if shit hits the fan. Even from a manufacturing standpoint, I have multiple manufacturers teed up, ready to go, who I want to partner with if, God forbid, our factory burns down. God forbid they go out of business. God forbid something happens. Okay, cool. This sucks really bad. It's going to be really, really difficult to make this change, but we know where to start and we know how to get this going. And with the collective group of good people we have, as hard as it's going to be, we're going to make it work. And that's kind of something that's super important from that standpoint, and the consistency of keeping the business floating and keeping the business going is always be prepared for what's happening next. That aligns perfectly with goal setting, and you just always need to do as much homework as you can and have as many options available as you can.
Yeah, because it's true. I think 50 to slightly less, depending on the year, of businesses fail within 5 years. About a quarter of them fail in the first year. So if you're working with someone, even if they're like 5 years old, they might not be there for another 5 years. So a easy way to determine that is like, well, what are their goals? Are they outlandish? And that might be a red flag, or they don't have any, and that might be a red flag. So I think goal setting is super important, not just for you, but the people you work with, to know what's going on.
As you go through time with your business from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, parlaying in with the goal thought process here, you also have to keep in mind reasons you could potentially fail. If you're not keeping an eye on certain things throughout the future and the growth, something could come out of nowhere and you could be very stagnant, and then being stagnant can lead to failure very quickly. Case in point is marketing. Marketing is, we talked about it as well. Marketing is one of those things that is so important to see growth and to see success, but it's also one of those things that you have to spend money on without getting an instant return or instant gratification. So as you're setting your goals and you're figuring out the future and what you want to do and how you want to grow and how you want to expand, you need to include in there the marketing budget. You need to include in there a strategy. Okay, if we hit X amount of revenue by year 2, this is fantastic. Well, now that we hit X amount in revenue, I want to put 10% of that budget that's going to go towards marketing. So then if you look at it, well, I now lose 10% of profits that I could have had. Okay, it is what it is, but that profit you're peeling could go back into the business that at some point 5 years down the road from that point, you're going to make X amount more. And that's the same thing from when I talked about the legal standpoint of, hey, at the beginning I had any attorney that would do it on the side. Cool. You get to different stages, you need better representation along the way, or more representation along the way aligned with the direction you're trying to take the business is probably the more true or fair thing. But planning and goal setting will always forever be a priority for the people who are the most successful. Without a structure, without an idea, or without a general way to get there, you're never going to make it. You're never going to get to the numbers. You're just going to be flying with the seat of your pants.
Yeah, even within what you're saying there, the advertising dollars, have a goal in there. What's your rate of return on your advertising spend? Or Derek likes to do your lifetime rate of return, where it's not, because it takes so long, it's not necessarily today, but over a couple years, does that client come back again and again? What's the rate of return from that original ad spend? So making sure if you're working with vendors, do they have metrics and goals and dashboards that you've communicated to them that they're tracking and communicating back to you to make sure you're within the range you would set?
How important is it for you from when you're running numbers with clients or just in business in general, the break even point? Knowing that number, and that's something that I struggle with because to my mind, I'm like, well, we're making money every month, so we're breaking even. But it's like, no, you break even over the course of a year in whatever the time frame that actually is for what your expenditures are.
Yeah, I think that's, if we're going to set any goal, it would be to break even. If you were going to know any number, it would be what's your break even point. To calculate it, you need your sales, your variable costs, and your fixed costs. So that kind of helps you. Those are the three buckets you should be focused on, and how those three buckets interplay determine your other goals, your business strategy as a whole, your pricing. Everything else is going to kind of come from those three big macro concepts.
So if you're a bakery, what are some examples of things that you should be looking for from a break even cost, or what go into that calculation for you specifically?
Yeah, so it's always the three: sales, variable costs, and fixed costs. So sales are always sales. It's pretty self-explanatory. Variable costs would be things that the more you sell, the more you incur that cost, and the less you sell, the less you incur that cost. So things like in a bakery, you've got the butter, the salt, the flour, the packaging to sell your goods in, all those types of things. The more you sell, you're going to need more of that stuff. Those costs are going to go up. So usually that's a ratio, a percentage of sales. Then your fixed costs are going to be things like rent. If you sell 10 times more this month, unless your lease is based on your sales, your rent would stay the same. Your office manager's payroll isn't going to change if you sell more or sell less, unless you have some sort of bonus structure. So your legal fees, your accounting fees, your software expenses, those are all going to stay the same. Those are going to be your fixed costs. So the relationship between your fixed costs, how much you're selling, and how much of what you're selling goes towards your variable costs is what you use to determine that break-even point. And then your margin of safety is how far above that break-even point you are, to know how much room you have to make more risky decisions. Do I hire this person or not? Well, how far above your break-even point are you? Do I sign this new lease or not? Well, how far above your break-even point are you? How much margin of safety do you have? If that decision fails, are you now losing money? Are you below your break-even point, or are you still above your break-even point even if the decision doesn't pan out?
And you could always tell whenever we have a good month is because I typically spend a little bit more money above the break-even point. So it's pretty good indicator.
It's amazing how your fixed costs change based on how much you're selling.
So you always want to keep an eye on that, and you always want to save for a rainy day as well. But those are obviously good problems to have down the road as you continue to grow. So wrapping up here, we talked about success or failure, depending on different benchmarks that you have. Success or failure when it comes to goal setting, I think is super, super important. And, I think a lot of that comes down to having this stuff really aligned with who you are, what you're going to do with the brand, the business, whatever strategy you're putting together. But not having an ongoing, consistently changing sets of goals for your future could really end up being the reason that you fail long-term because you didn't pay attention to simple things along the way.
Yep.
So we appreciate you guys. Another solid episode. Goal setting will forever be such an important thing. That has certainly changed my life. It's really reassured things when things were tough and challenging for the business, for the brand. When I didn't think things would get better, or I just didn't know when they would get better, goal setting really, really did allow me to say, okay, we're on the right path. Holy shit, things are fine. Like, this is a great situation. And then the beauty of that is you get to look at it a couple years down the road and you could say, hey, I'm very proud of where we've gotten. I appreciate the efforts of where we've gotten. Now, okay, if we've done this in X amount of time, we know that we could crank up the goal setting for the next 5 years and only multiply that even higher because we've achieved what we have. So keep pushing. You remember, everything you do is going to be built by doing, and you have to just get after it and start. And it's the only way to get going. So looking forward to talking to you on our next episode.